Hey, welcome to College Church. Good to see you. And online, I want to say welcome to you too. I think last week we had probably 350 folks online worshiping with us. So I'm grateful for you as well. Hey, I've got a couple exciting announcements for you. We're going to get to one of the things you just saw in just a moment. But the first one is this. We have a new staff here at College Church. We have made a hire, and his name is Todd Keller. Now, Todd is on the far left there, but that's his beautiful family coming from Bloomington, Illinois. And his role will be our discipleship and mission pastor. And so I think you are going to love him and Kim and his kids. And they're really excited about coming. Are you excited about that? There we go. Good. You may say, Kevin, discipleship mission pastor. Let me tell you where that comes from. We think discipleship around here is really, really important. And when we say that, what we really mean is, how do we help people, whether it's your first time here, and if it's your first time here, I want to say welcome to you. Whether it's your first time here, or you've been around here for 60 years, whether you've been walking with Jesus like 0 days, or you've been walking with Jesus for thousands of days, we think all of us can move forward and grow deeper in our relationship with him. And so Todd's primary role will be to help us to facilitate what it looks like to help people take next steps and to continue to deepen their walk with Jesus here at College Church. And then when you think about that, I think this is just how it should work, right? You say, well, discipleship mission, here's the big picture. That if we are truly deepening our relationship with him, it should translate that we're going out to be used by him. So discipleship and mission go hand in hand. They always should, right? We're not just learning more so we know more so we can throw more around, right? To impress folks. We're growing deeper because we want to look more like him so that we live more like him. And that we love him more so we can turn around and love others more. And so he'll also be responsible for, when you think about all the ways College Church partners with all kinds of folks in this community, we want to be a church that is sent and finds ways to go out and serve the people around us, and he's going to be responsible for that as well. So he's got a big job. And but we're excited. Probably beginning of October is when we expect him and his family. So we're excited for them. And then I have another exciting announcement, but you'll hear it next week, okay? All right, little teaser, but it's coming, I promise. Next week, same time, same place. Hey, and then this, if you're a college student, I met a couple of you, not gonna embarrass you, but you know I just saw you. And so, and actually it was really it was fun because one of them, I met her Thursday night at the Connection Fair, and I actually remembered her name. And so that doesn't happen very often, but I got it right. And so I am so thankful that you are here. And I just wanna tell you, if you're a college student and you're here today, number one, I've got a little Starbucks card for you, and they're right out at the cafe there, like the bar. Feel free to go there right after the service. You get a drink on us this week, okay? Second thing is, make sure you stay around because we have a great lunch for you today. And we, it's not just feeding you. We want to be there to visit with you, to get to know you. And here's what you may be saying, why are you doing all this for us? Why would you give us free coffee and free food? And part of it is because we're College Church, right? And we're partnered next to a university. You see it right here, right? I was told, I preached not too long ago at a different church with a different shirt, with a different university. I was told, you got to get rid of that stuff, right? So I'm wearing the right thing, right? But here's what I really want you to hear. And hear this. If you're a college student, hear this. Yes, we want to bless you today. We want you to enjoy some coffee on us. We want you to enjoy some food on us. Reality is this, we're not counting on you to really increase the budget here. We're not looking for you to be huge givers. But we need you. And I don't just hear that for a second. We need you, right? Mm-hmm. I know this about college students. They have so much to offer. And the way they see things, some of you may say, oh, the way they see, but here's what I'm gonna tell you, like, we need them. We need to learn from them, and they'll learn from us, and they're gonna add a lot of some energy to the place. We need you. And the second thing is this, I just want you to know, no strings attached, we just wanna love you. And we wanna be your church, and we recognize that for many of you, you've come from a ways away, and you had a church somewhere else, and we'll never be that church, but we wanna be your church here. And no, I speak for the staff, and I speak confidently that we're here for you, and we wanna love you, we wanna care for you, and we want relationship with you. And so glad you're here today. Hey, we're in this new series, right? Fresh Start. We're talking about this idea of when you have a fresh start, when you start over, it's the opportunity. It's a season of opportunity for new things. So last week we discussed that it's this season for maybe even like when you think about new things, right? New things, that doesn't have to be bad. New things just means new things. But the truth is, oftentimes that's changed. Some of you have moved locations this Sunday, right? You're sitting in a different spot. You're getting a new perspective. And I just want to say, hey, thank you for trying with me, right? Thank you for participating with me. One of you came to me earlier and said, man, I the other night, like I moved to a different seat, but then I couldn't find my wife. And, but I appreciate that, right? Like you're trying, you're working with me. And here's just what I'm gonna say. I know this, that the idea of change for many of us, it causes us to shrink back. Why? Because it raises our anxiety if we're honest. How many of you would say, can we just have a moment of honesty? That change, Kevin, raises my anxiety. Come on, get them up. Okay, good. See, I'm with you. Change raises my anxiety too. Like when I changed my whole life upside down and moved here, it raised my anxiety. Someone this week said, I won't tell you what they were talking about, but because there's all kinds of things here at church, but they were like, man, I have this great fear that you're gonna change this, right? And this is different for all of us, but whatever this is. And I thought, I can feel that, right? Even in their words. And I feel that too. I just want you to know, like, I'm with you. And I'm probably like, my greatest anxiety, if I'm just honest, my greatest anxiety is that that we're gonna stay the same. Because I believe God has big plans for this place. And he's got people that need this place, people that need you, college students that need you. And so we're gonna have to try to work through this together to become not the place that we used to be, to become the place that God has intended us to be today. And I think we can do it. In fact, what I would say is, I shouldn't say, I don't think we can do it. I think he can do it, yet not I, but Christ in me. We sang it, right? That he can do it through us. All right, so as we look at the road ahead of us and around the next corner, here's what I'd tell you. Fear is normal. It's okay. I'm with you. I battle anxiety in myself. But I also think it's normal to confront fear. The Bible speaks about it often. And here's what I want to say today. The presence of fear gives us the opportunity for courage. Just think about this. The presence of fear gives us the opportunity for courage. This is a season for courage. Courage, a couple definitions. The ability to face something that frightens one. Or the second one was this, strength in the face of pain or grief. That's courage. I have a friend who works for Team World Vision. His name is Michael Chitwood. And he said this, I thought it was so good in a book that he wrote. Most of what God has for us is on the other side of fear. Most of what God has for us is on the other side of fear. Matthew 14, verses 22 through 36. It's where we're gonna be, I'm gonna be talking to you from today. It's a powerful story, and I'm excited to share with you, so here we go. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and cross to the other side of the lake while he sent the people home. After sending them home, he went up into the hills by himself to pray. Night fell while he was still there alone. Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. Can you picture it with me? When the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost!" But Jesus spoke to them at once, and he said, "Don't be afraid," he said. "Take courage, I am here." Then Peter called to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on water." "Yes, come," Jesus said. So Peter went over the side of the boat and walked on the water toward Jesus. But when he saw a strong wind and waves, he was terrified and he began to sink. "Save me, Lord," he shouted. Jesus immediately reached out and grabbed him. "You have so little faith," Jesus said. "Why did you doubt me?" When they climbed back into the boat, the wind stopped. Then the disciples worshiped him. "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. After they'd crossed the lake, they landed at Gennesaret, where the people recognized Jesus. The news of his arrival spread quickly throughout the whole area, and soon people were bringing all their sick to be healed. They begged him to let the sick touch at least the fringe of his robe, and all who touched him were healed. Father, I am so thankful for your word. I'm thankful for the truth in it. I'm humbled at the opportunity to share it. And I trust that when it's shared, your power is right here with me. But Lord, your power is in the gospel. And so, Lord, I pray that as I share your word today, that I would do my thing and you would do yours. And that I will trust you at the end of the day. I will trust you to move in the hearts of people. I ask all of this in Jesus' name. Help me. Amen. You know, this passage of scripture, I was looking at it, and I was looking at verse 24, actually, is where I started. It says, "Meanwhile, the disciples were in trouble far away from land, for a strong wind had risen, and they were fighting heavy waves." Now, here's just, it's the truth. Fear and uncertainty, they go together, don't they? Fear and uncertainty, they're like this. That anytime we're facing uncertainty, fear tends to raise its head. I mean, all was good on a normal trip back across from the lake, and then they encountered the unexpected. I doubt they would, had turned on the news that morning and saw that a storm was going to be rolling in. This was a storm that was unexpected, and all of a sudden they found themselves in the middle of it. Now, this is life as we know it. It is life as we know it. We're cruising along and all is good, and then we encounter something that is not expected, it's unexpected. It happens to us every single day. For many of you, it happened this week. It happened this very week, it happened this very month, and if it hasn't, it might happen this very week. Because none of us can avoid this. It's life. Whether it's a job change, whether it's hardship, whether it's a medical report, whether it's grief or loss, whether it's something with your kids or your grandkids. Life is full of seasons. I wish wouldn't it be nice, maybe somebody could come up with this around here, but wouldn't it be nice if you had an app? You could just pull it up on your phone. And you know how maybe you use Google Maps or maybe you don't. I have to get around this place, right? But it's interesting, right? You pull it up and it'll show you where the traffic is ahead. It shows you where the congestion is so you can go a different route. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just pull up an app and it was just hey, coming Tuesday, whoop, congestion, not gonna be good. So here's your way around it. We could make some money on something like that, couldn't we? I mean, everybody would download that app because we all want to see it coming. And yet we know this. Life is full of things that we can't see coming. We don't know what's going to happen this afternoon, besides a month from now or 6 months from now. And the truth is, for many of us, it makes us anxious. It makes us feel uncertain. Land is the safe place, and the disciples find themselves far from it, experiencing strong wind and tall waves. But here's the promise in this passage that is beautiful. Jesus makes his way to us in the seasons of uncertainty and fear. That's who he is. That's who my Jesus is. I see it throughout Scripture. Look at verse 25. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them walking on the water. Now, I've shared with my kids before. Maybe, I don't know if last time you think about, might be grandkids. It might be that you reflect on your own kids. But I remember sharing with my kids this important lesson when I used to say, hey, nothing good happens after midnight. Right? It's when we say, like, we want you home at a certain time because nothing good happens after midnight. Speaking of my own days, reflecting back, I'm not gonna tell you any of those stories, but nothing good happened after midnight, right? As a teenager. It's the truth. Now, here's the one caveat to that story. Unless Jesus is in the story. But there wasn't very often where I was saying to my parents, sorry, I was an hour late because I was sharing Jesus with a friend. Right? Maybe that's your story, that wasn't mine. But I will say this, when I was a kid, I had all kinds of fear and anxiety, truthfully, to this day. I still battle it. Now I recognize it. I recognize it for what it is, and I ask Jesus to help me with it. But as a kid, some things like we learn, some things are just in us. It's just in me. My dad was a farmer, and he would stand out and he would worry about whether it was gonna rain or not rain a lot, right? And I say all that to say, it just kind of I just got it. My mom has it, my dad had it, and I got it. But as a kid, I remember that when you came into our house, you came into this little, what would you call it? Like a porch area. You went up the steps into the dining room and the kitchen, and then you would enter a hallway, and that's where the 3 bedrooms were. So if you entered the hallway and you turned to the left, that was my sister's bedroom. If you entered the hallway and you stood there and you went to the right, you walked down that hall, that was my parents' bedroom. And guess where my bedroom was? Straight ahead. Like if you were in the hallway, the door was right there. That was my bedroom. I hated that location. I always thought it's the worst location for a bedroom in the house. Because I thought the moment someone comes through the door and they come into that, down little area and they come up to where are they gonna go first? They're not going down the hall to my sister's room and they're not going down the hall. They're coming right in here. That was always my feeling as a kid. And so I would go to bed and now picture this, so you'd enter my room, the door would come open, and when that door came open, it would hit the foot of my bed. And the foot of my bed went along the wall that way. And so what would happen is when I went to bed, I would leave that door open where it touched the foot of my bed, and it left a crack about this wide, okay? It left a crack about this wide, and we would leave the light on out in the hallway. So what I would do is I would lay there and I'd prop my head up on the pillow, and I would just stare at the crack. Because I knew if someone came in, they had to break the light. Isn't that, you're like, you had issues, right? I did. I would stare at the crack. And I don't ever remember falling asleep, because I would, at one point I would, but it would always be as I was just staring at the crack. And then at one point my eyes would get so heavy I'd fall asleep. But here's the other thing I did that probably drove my parents crazy. I look back, they were so gracious with me as a kid. But here's what I would do. I would lay in bed and I would get scared and I was staring at the crack. I'd hear something, right? I'd stare at the crack. And all of a sudden then I'd go, good night. And then I would just wait. And then I'd hear mom go, good night. And I'd be, okay. I'd stare at the crack and I'd hear something else. Good night. I did it over and over and over, about every 3 minutes. Good night, right? I'm surprised my dad didn't just come in and wring my neck, right? But here's what I was doing, right? I just wanted to know they were still awake. Because I knew if dad was still awake, I was okay. I look back at that you would think as a 16-year-old, I'm just joking, I'm just kidding, right? Just kidding. I wasn't a day over 15. But I tell you that, because see, here's what I want you to see. Sometimes I think what we want, you know this, when you find yourself in fearful, uncertain, anxious kinds of places, you just want to know that Jesus hasn't fallen asleep. You want to know that he's still awake. You want to know that he knows what's going on in your life and that he's still there. You know, it's funny how things don't really change. You grow up and it's the exact same. I love that this scripture tells us that at 3 a.m, at 3 a.m, Jesus was making his way to his disciples who were in the midst of the wind and the waves. Because here's what it tells me. As one of God's children who sometimes still struggles with fear and anxiety, it tells me that he never falls asleep, that I'm never a burden to him, that it's okay to wake him up in the middle of the night, that he sees me in my struggle and he hears my cry. That is wonderful news for us, that Jesus is available at 3 a.m. See, we can expect Jesus to be near in the places far from land and full of waves. When it says, when the disciples saw him walking on the water, they were terrified. In their fear, they cried out, "It's a ghost." You know, one of the things I'm just gonna tell you is we don't have to be surprised. We don't have to be shocked. We don't have to be fearful in the slightest. But just know this, that in those difficult places in your life, you can anticipate and you can expect that Jesus is near. At the very nature of who he is, that's who he is he is near. Psalm 34 tells us the Lord hears his people when they call to him for help. He rescues them from all of their troubles. I love this line. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and he rescues those whose spirits are crushed. Doesn't that just sound like this compassionate God that loves his kids? And we're on the receiving end of it. I also love Isaiah. When you go through deep waters, I'll be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you. And you're like, Kevin, I thought this series was about opportunities. We're getting there. Because see, this is when now in the story, the opportunity comes. As we encounter waves, Jesus meets us there. In the most awful of times, Jesus meets us there. In the middle of the night, Jesus meets us there. And then there becomes the opportunity to respond. As he initiates and he's there and we know his presence, we have the opportunity to respond. In the midst of uncertainty, in the midst of fear, in the midst of anxiety, Jesus gives us this wonderful option. It says in verse 27, but Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage. See that word? Take courage. And I love what's right behind it. I am here. You know, I was reading that this week and I was just zeroed in on it. And I was just thinking about it. And I thought, wow, like take courage, but why? Why can they be courageous in the midst of the waves and the wind? And because he's there, because he's present. His presence changes everything. We see right here. I mean, this is really important. Take hold of courage is synonymous with take hold of Jesus. It's the same picture. Take hold of courage is synonymous with take hold of Jesus. The Bible reminds us in multiple places that the most important thing about courage is the basis of it. Now hear this, because I think we get confused at times. Courage doesn't come from you. Courage doesn't come from like, I'm strong. Courage doesn't come from like the ability to read our circumstances. It doesn't come from confidence to know how to navigate this life. True courage comes from his presence in our life, period. Our courage is because he is with us and he is certainty in the midst of uncertainty. That's what this passage, like picture it with me. I'll tell you, again, like you're gonna learn this about me. Like there's not much you won't know, okay? Because I just think that's how leaders should lead. But I've been reminded oftentimes, you know, as I've sat in this office, even right here at College Church, right, that I've never felt so overwhelmed in a job. Never felt so overwhelmed in something that he's called me to do. And the hardest thing even about coming here, in fact, I can't tell you, I wish I could describe it. I really can't, because it was such a painful process to get here for me, because it was so hard to battle the anxiety and the fear that was on the other side of that decision. And I can't tell you how many nights I would lay in bed and I was thinking about you, and I was thinking about Olathe, Kansas, and I was thinking about College Church. And in my head, I would be like, Jesus, I trust you. Jesus, I trust you. Jesus, I trust you. And then when I'd flip my feet out on the floor, I'd think, I'm not quite ready to take a step. Right? You ever been there? It's one thing to trust him up here. It's another thing to actually get the feet moving. One of the things I'd even tell you, there was so many different steps to the process of coming here, right? And you could ask Pastor Eddie, but every time there was a step, I would wait till the absolute last moment to notify him. At one point, he said, I have a board meeting and I want you to let me know about this, and it's at 5 o'clock. And I'm not kidding you, it was 4:59. Right? And I'm like, Jesus, I trust you. But to actually do this, to actually dial the number, to hit send, it's a whole nother ball game, right? And what is that? I can tell you what it is. Like fear and anxiety, oftentimes they cause us just to buckle down. They cause us to not want to change. They cause us to want to keep everything the same, to say, you know what, the same may not be good, but I'll take it because it's easier to take the same than to have this uncertainty about what the future holds. I've been there. And we're also reminded in this story, right, that more attention has to be given to the one that walks with us than the waves around us. See, this story displays a great relationship between faith and courage. It says, then Peter called him, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you, walking on water. What does Jesus say? Yes, come. So Peter went over the side of that boat and he walked on the water towards Jesus. You've heard the story. See, we see right here faith and courage and the close relationship between the two in that moment. Courage is not the lack of fear. Courage is the ability to face it. I can guarantee you, see, the first step in facing our fear, it's a big one, but then it comes one foot after the other, trusting Jesus every step of the way. That when our eyes are so locked on Jesus that he becomes bigger than the waves around us. That's it. That's what it looks like. I got one final story to share, and I'm going to challenge you. But probably 6 years ago, I was leading a church, and I had a friend call from Team World Vision. I gave you the quote, right? That all good things are on the other side of fear. And he called, and he said, hey, Kevin, here's what I'd love for you to do. I would love to be able to come to your church, and I'd love to be able to share about, to ask your people to run a marathon for clean drinking water. And at the time, I was like, you haven't seen my people. And I actually told him, I said, hey, listen, you may go to other churches and do this, but my people, they're not marathon runners. They're just not. And he's like, oh, no, Kevin, that's what everybody tells me. Everybody tells me they're not marathon runners, but I come and people run a marathon. And I was like, So I prayed and I asked the Lord, and sure enough, I let him come and he came. And 70 people signed up to run the Chicago Marathon. And I remember when they all came to the section where they were supposed to, and I looked and I was like, uh-oh. These are not runners. There's no way. They're not gonna be able to do it. We've just set them up for terrible failure. And he was like, Kevin, just trust me, trust me. And so long story, we had a whole lot, fast forward, I'm gonna tell you this and I'll get back to the story. 5 years later, we've had hundreds of people run the Chicago Marathon, raised over $500,000 for clean drinking water around the world. But go back at the very beginning, I just remember thinking, there's no way. I actually felt sorry for that group of people. And then I knew that the Lord inside was tugging on me that, hey, if you're gonna ask people to do this, if you're gonna ask these people to do this, you gotta do it too. And I will tell you, I resisted. And I thought, I don't want to do it. I've never liked to run. I've always hated to run. When you played sports, running was always punishment, right? And no, I don't want to do it. And so, but finally, I relented. And I was like, I'll do it. And it started with like, go on a 20-minute walk. And I'll tell you what I did. After that Sunday, I went home. I went home that afternoon. I still remember it like yesterday. And I walked around the block. No kidding. Walked around the block and I tried to jog just a little bit. And I thought, what did I do? I'm in big trouble. I can't do this. And I'm gonna look like an idiot in front of everyone. I can't do this. And now everybody knows I'm doing it. But I did it at 20-minute, I went for a 20-minute walk and then like 25-minute walks and then 35 minutes and then 45-minute run walk. And then like it just kept growing. It went from 2 miles to 4 to 6 to 12 to 16 to 18 with shots in the foot. Had lots of cortisone shots and all kinds of different other things. My dad died in the middle of it. I had every reason to quit. But I remember so clearly thinking, I don't think there's any way I can do this. And it was like the Lord just kept saying, like, there's so many things in your life that you could say that to, but with my help, you can do it. I remember when I crossed that finish line, and here's how I viewed it. I was not setting any records, right? I just told myself, all I gotta do is put one foot in front of the other for about 6 hours. You gotta wrap your head around it, right? If I can put one foot in front of the other for about 6 hours, all I wanna do is finish before like the street cleaner behind me catches me, right? And that was very close, right? But I finished that thing. I finished it. I bet I had to crawl across the end, but I finished it. And I look back at that process in my life, and Jesus taught me so much through it. But one of them was, right, that you can continue with my help. You can continue to conquer your fears. And on the other side of fear is incredible things that I have for you. It's the truth for all of us. And I had no idea, even in the midst of battling grief over the loss of my dad, that on those long 4-hour runs and 5-hour runs, and that it would just be time for Jesus to begin to put my heart back together. As I ran all over the streets of Ottawa, he began to put my heart back together. He had so much in store for me than I could have ever known on the front side of that. And thankfully, I said yes. I tell you that story. I'm not asking you to run a marathon today. But I am asking you to do this. What I want for you is not to be held back by fear. What I want for you is to take courage. And not because you're strong, not because you're just gonna pull your socks up a little higher and get this done. You take courage because you recognize that Jesus is with you. I don't know what you're facing. I don't know what you're struggling with. I don't know what is causing high waves in your life, but know this, you are not alone. God is faithful. Even at 3 in the morning, that he makes his way to you and says, come on. Come on, take courage. Why? Because I'm here. There's a little piece of paper. You're probably like, why are we sitting on paper today, right? Here's what I want you to do. There's a little piece of paper, and Michael's gonna come and he's gonna lead us. A little piece of paper, and there should be something to write with in your seats there on the back of them. But I just trust that maybe God is speaking to some of you today. What is it that you're facing that causes you to feel the high waves in your life? Well, what is it that you're facing that causes you to feel fear or anxiety? Maybe just uncertainty. And then what is the next step that takes courage? That would be a way in which you say, Jesus, not only, I see that it's you and I know you're here, but what would it look like for you to step over the edge of your boat to make your way towards him and to trust him? To trust him when you really don't know what it looks like ahead. Wouldn't it be great if that's what we were known for? The people who call themselves followers of Jesus were known for people who not only say we believe in him, but who walk like it, who take steps in the midst of uncertainty. May you hear him today say, yes, come, because you can take courage. Why? Because I'm here. I'm here and I will be with you. As they sing this song, here's what I want you to do. I want you to write on that piece of paper exactly what that fear is. Write it down. And maybe you even want to say what that step is that you sense that he's asking you to take. And then if you're able, I would love for you just to walk those papers up and drop them right here in these baskets. In some ways, what you're doing is, see, there's this practical side of this message that says, it's one thing just to think about something, it's another to take a step. To step out of your seat, to step out of your boat and to walk and to say, God, I'm going to begin to make my way towards you in the midst of this fear and anxiety. And you drop it in these baskets. And if you can't walk, that's okay. Take that thing with you and know this. There are steps that can be taken, even if you're not taking one here today. If you're online, there's steps that can be taken, even if you're not here today. Can we do this together? Maybe as you drop it off, you may want to pray. You can do that as well. But be faithful to what you're hearing and respond to him today.